Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I am Mona Duncan, and this little weekly program is dedicated to living in the now and to appreciating everything in life that comes to us, to appreciate it and see it as a life lesson. And today's topic is on simple ways to uncomplicate life, and life being as it is. There was a couple of little things that has to kind of creep up and make a little difference here. So that's okay. We're just going to plow on through. So
Good.
thank you for being here. Open up the slideshow here and talk about simple ways to uncomplicate our life. Of course, what's simple to one is not always simple to everyone. And sometimes once we use them, then they become more simple. I'm seeing, I think someone's trying to get in and I'm not having it come up on my screen. Anyway, simple ways to uncomplicate our life. And so I was kind of thinking here this morning about alchemy, the magic formula of it, where you could turn lead into gold or find the fountain of youth. Well, the thing of it is there is more truth to alchemy than one may think. And that's the secret of it. It's our thoughts. It's what we think about that determines whether or not we can find a lesson that is worth emulating or avoiding. It's only as we begin to really appreciate everything that comes into our life. And so we need to look at who we are. And so I have here, and on the left-hand side, I have that this is you. That no matter who you are, where you are totally unique. You are one of a kind, you are an exclusive, you are exceptional, you are distinctive and distinguished, you're matchless, irreplaceable, uncommon. I mean, look at your fingerprints. There's nobody in the whole world that's like yours, and that's either to exonerate us or sometimes to condemn us. But anyway, that we are so unique, we are so special. But, sometimes we can think we're not that special. We're not so special that all the lights are going to turn red or going to turn green for us, or that everything is going to. So the thing of it is, or the question to ask ourselves is that in the specialness, are we being authentic? Are we being genuine? Are we being real? Are we valid? Are we sincere without wax? Back in the early days of artwork, and they would make these great sculptures, but then they would take wax and put it in the places where there were mars, where something had been chipped out. And it would look beautiful for a while, but over time it would wear away, or it would be too hot and it would begin to run. And so it is knowing how unique and simple and wonderful we are individually, but being authentically who us, realizing that we are the author of our life and to live our life genuinely. So in looking for simplicity in life, it's looking here that sometimes there's some things that kind of steals the simplicity away from us. And a big one of those is self-doubt. A little bit of self-doubt may be okay, not being so overly confident, or that overinflated ego trying to compensate for low self-esteem. But to look at and realize that we have more gifts and talents than we may realize. Another simplicity stealer is multitasking, trying to do too many things at one time, or trying to do everything by yourself without getting a little information or a little help from someone else. We have our simplicity stolen whenever we don't know how to say no. Or maybe sometimes we have the simplicity stolen when we don't know how to say yes, because again, it goes back up to that self-doubt. The failure to monitor interruptions. Now, not necessarily to have that, you can come in and camp out and take the rest of my time, but to monitor those interruptions so that they don't become chipping away at the necessary things in life. And then, of course, the old biggie there with procrastination. Well, I'll do it later. It's kind of that tomorrow syndrome that not now. I'm not up to it now. The thing of it is that we're very energetic, and it's up to us to wind up that energy. And as we begin to do something, then the energy takes over and we're ready to go. So one of the things that I put in asking about today is, what's with this less is more insanity? Less really is more. Less stuff gives us more room. Less debt gives us more money. Less commitments gives us more time. Less perfection, gives us more peace. Now, it's not to say you always do your best, but always go for excellent as opposed to perfection. Because perfection, even when something reaches perfection, I mean, this is the absolute pinnacle. What's going to happen 24 hours from now? It's going to be aging a little more. The apple's going to be becoming a little less fresh. So when we have going for excellence to do absolutely the best we can, realizing we can always learn more and do better, then we're going to have more peace. And then also less complaining will give us more joy. Just to not complain. Now, it's not to say that there's not things going wrong, but as we begin to look at it, that this is a life lesson. So it was kind of worth repeating. Mm-hmm. As we have less stuff, we have more room. And that can, well, I'll let you figure it out. As we have less debt, less obligations, then we have more money, more freedom. As we have less commitment, we have room for more time. And sometimes that time needs to be thinking about and evaluating genuinely who we are. As we are prone less to having everything to be perfect, we can have more peace in doing a good job. And definitely, as we complain less, we find ourselves having more joy. So that takes us to Dr. Glasser's disconnecting habits. That not only do we often use them with others, but unfortunately, we use them on ourselves. And as we can learn not to use these on ourselves. Now, to get honest with ourselves, to realize that if there's something critical there, that we made a critical misstep, to get honest about it and to acknowledge it and to see how can I not do this again without beating yourself up or without blaming someone else for having left something out. So rather than always using these negative habits to you, which is a way of trying to control, even trying to control you, but it's not effective because you are discounting rather than looking at the gifts and talents that goes back to that unique person that we talked about initially. And then we want to use connecting habits of effectively simple people. Now, I don't mean that simple as in, well, yes, I do. I just mean simple as in uncomplicated. And as we are complicated, but the more we can get to the more simple we can be, the more simple life becomes. And that includes supporting, encouraging, listening, accepting, trusting, respecting, and negotiating to see how we can improve. And it's living with no conflict. No conflict with ourselves. To have that life of simplicity, meaning that we have nothing to prove. It's not out there, not setting out for the Holy Grail. And the thing of it is when we're not doing it with all of our might, sometimes we find it serendipity. So it's having nothing to prove. It's wanting to learn. It's being eager to find out. It is knowing that letting our accomplishments speak for themselves rather than having to try to awe someone either of how difficult it was. Just let any accomplishment speak for itself. No need to brag or to proclaim our greatness. If others can't see it, then maybe it's just not there. To humbly recognize our self-worth regardless of any failures that we have. That sometimes, failing is falling forward, if we will allow it to be. It's going back to seeing everything as a gift to us, that we were trying something that we had not yet accomplished, that we had not yet grown into. Having no conflict in being willing to share the spotlight. Sometimes we can be jealous of others and not want their accomplishments or not be happy for what they have accomplished. But it's being willing to share the spotlight. Actually, it's even shining the spotlight on others that have overcome. It's not being intimidated by the success of others. It's realizing that, you know what? My promotion's waiting for me. No, you didn't get my promotion. You got yours because you were ready for it. And mine's waiting for me as I step up to bat. And then honestly reckon where there is conflict. Just really begin to look honestly at what's my thoughts here regarding this, and how is that keeping me stuck. So then I've spoken to you before about my love for words and how to really go deep with them to see what they mean. So I have just a few words here for us to look at. To ponder, to think about. I like to think of it as here's the pond and all the things, wondering what is way down beneath all that surface. It's ponder in Latin means to weigh on the mind. And sometimes it can have great weight, but sometimes it's that great weight that can lift a burden where it becomes lighter. That preponderance of the evidence, that weight, that influence, that importance as to who we are and what our purpose in life is, begins to help us to be buoyed up so that we come to the surface and that we begin to float, that we begin to swim, that we begin to make progress. And then silence, the simplicity of silence. Without silence to find ourselves, sometimes we end up beside ourselves. We just have all this chatter going on in our mind. And it's letting silence be our friend. It's through silence that we truly learn to hear. And discerning, learning to discern. Discern means to be discreet, description, and discerning. And it's Latin for taking apart so that we can distinguish. To know enough to keep separate. To discern, is this good for me or not good for me? To discern, should I remain separate from this or should I join and be a part of it? To be able to make out, to detect, to perceive. And as we can begin to be diplomatic and polite and judicious, as we begin to discern the situation and ourselves and others, and continually evaluate. Evaluation is the highest level of thinking. It is being able to weigh and measure and to get really honest, to look at our pros and to look at our cons, to look at the positives that we have and the negatives that we have, and realize that even those negatives somewhere in life are for a reason. It's to give us the energy to speak up when we may be too timid to speak up. And to realize that to evaluate and that we give value to seemingly negative situations, that it takes that pressure to build our muscles, that it takes those difficulties to help us see the true value of life. and to come to an equitable decision. Here is a quote that I have from Paul Marshall about rest. And I find that it is so endemic to the fact that life is simple, but it's also complicated. That everything with that, even, anyway, rest is no small matter. Most of us manage to have problems with work and at the same time to have problems with rest, usually at the same time. We not only downplay the place of work, we downplay rest as well. Indeed, rest and work may involve similar activities done in a different spirit. The question is not about the activity itself, but about the orientation of our heart or our mind. Resting is tied intimately to faith, to what we believe, to what we assign, to what we label things. If we label them difficult, then they become even more difficult than they need to be. If we label something frivolous, then it becomes frivolous, even when maybe it really has a lot of weight to it that needs to be treated with great respect. And so, bringing us down here to having a simplified life is to self-evaluate for life. What do you want? Not just cursory, but what do you really, 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 really want? Do you really want integrity? Do you really want truth? Do you really want genuineness? What are you doing, and what have you been doing to get what you want? What are you thinking, and what have you been thinking to get what you want? What are you thinking, and what are you doing, and how are you feeling? And what about your physiology? How's your blood pressure? How's the rhythm of your circadian rhythm of your heart? 3, is what you're doing and thinking helping you get what you want? And what options do you have? 4, what options do you have that could help you get closer to what it is that you want? What it is that you really, 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 really want? And now that you have chosen the simple option, what is your plan to get what you really, really want? So this comes back down to looking at simplicity and how we can gain it, and how sometimes less in the long run is more. And realizing that just to enjoy the simplicity of living life one day at a time and appreciating that. So thank you for being here, and many blessings.